going on, FA Nation? Welcome back. This is the Fantasy Alarm NASCAR DFS podcast. I'm Dan Malin, and I am joined, as always, by our FSWA three-time NASCAR Writer of the Year, Matt Selz. Matt, we are coming off yet another weekend impacted by rain. It was the second straight year the Chicago Street Race was impacted by rain. I guess that's just going to happen almost anywhere you go in the summer. But overall, what do you think of the race? Very surprising to see Shane Van Gisbergen go out the way he did when it really wasn't even his fault, but huge favorite to win the race and couldn't even really make it to the halfway point.
Yeah, and then Larson wrecks out via tire barrier and cement wall. So interesting twist that last year Alex Bowman finished dead last and SVG won it. This year SVG finished dead last and Alex Bowman won it. So it's kind of an interesting twist. Also, Larson and SVG were first and second in the Xfinity race, and then they were dead last and second to last in the Cup Series.
Regression.
So I thought overall it was a good race. The timed finish, I think, was fine given the circumstances. I wish they had started the race about 3 hours earlier because then the rain probably doesn't take effect. And if it does, it's towards the second half of the race.
Mm-hmm.
And you can certainly get it in without having to time it because for the second year in a row, they did not do as many laps as they said they were going to do. Last year, it was supposed to be a 100-lap race. They got, 75 in? This year, they had it set for 75, and they only got, 53, 54, 55, somewhere in there, I thought. I lost track of the lap count because I was paying attention to the timer that was going and the racing.
The timer kind of did add like an extra element of suspense to it. So
it did, except for the last caution when you basically knew that nobody up front was going to pit because there was not enough time to wear down the wet tires that they had on their car because there was only 15 minutes left to the race.
Mm-hmm.
So you're only going to get like 10 laps. Right, that's not like even if your wet tires are starting to blister, you can hold on for 10 laps. So in a way, I mean, not that the caution was anybody's fault, although I would have taken away the stage 2 caution. Once you went to a timed race, I would have taken away the stage 2 caution because that was going to hand the win to whoever was in the top 5 at that point because you knew they weren't going to pit.
Yeah.
Right. There's no point in pitting and letting somebody else come up front and then you have to go and make up spots. Although Bubba Wallace did make up, I think, 23 spots in the last 2 restarts.
And then that's insane, really.
Which is pretty impressive. And then, got fined quite a bit of money for retaliating against Bowman. I don't know. What do you think it was a fair penalty for Bubba?
Yeah, especially because I think he would rather take just the $50,000 fine and not lose any points. I think Bowman coming out and saying that he didn't think Bubba should be penalized or whatever, like Bowman owned up to it, understood the frustrations that Bubba had. I understand there's a safety issue involved because I think Bubba's net was down or Bowman's net was down. Either way,
Bowman's net was down, yeah.
Yeah, that's not okay. If I was NASCAR, I probably wouldn't have cared what Bowman had said. I probably still would have deducted points from Bubba to really send a message. Whatever, it's NASCAR's call. We know they bend the rules in a lot of situations. They will play favorites to some guys.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my point is that, Denny ran straight into Alex Bowman after Martinsville, when Bowman was trying to do his burnout and Denny ran right into him to stop him from doing the burnout, and his net was definitely down. No penalty for Denny. Chase ran into Daniel Suarez after the race, and I guess because they talked about it, there was no penalty. But Chase has also run into Denny before, got no penalty. Truex ran into a dude at Richmond earlier this year after the checker, no penalty. So it's just kind of like, are we picking favorites? Are we like, the whole the window net was down thing? Well, everybody's window net is down after the checkered flag all the time. You gave Ryan Blaney $1 million for completing a lap with the window net being held. Like, I don't know. It seems a little bit rule bendy to me. Not the biggest Bubba guy. Like, I think he's better than people want to give him credit for.
Mhm.
But I can also see, like, he should have been suspended last year when he right reared. Who the heck did he right rear? Kyle Busch, Blaney. He right reared. When did he right reared somebody at like?
I thought it was Larson or Elliott, but it could
Oh,
be
it was
wrong.
Larson. It was Larson.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, you're right. And then Chase did the same thing and got suspended. That's fine. That's a safety thing. You're under green. You're right rearing somebody. It's dangerous as all get out. Carson Hocevar spun a guy under caution when safety vehicles were on the track. I don't know. Dale Jr. said Bubba shouldn't have gotten fined because it happens every week. So are we now going to fine everybody every week for making contact?
I get it.
It's a
I get
weird
it, yeah.
precedent.
No, I know, but like we and this kind of goes beyond just like fine suspension, but it's like NASCAR just bends the rules however they see fit. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Like we can obviously complain about it. I'm still bothered by the fact that the Xfinity Series race at Chicago last year was deemed an official race when they only ran like 25 laps.
Yeah, and only like 4 under green. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't believe like they actually gave Cole Custer the win. It's kind of nonsense, but that's what NASCAR does. Very not the greatest explanation. It's just so much gray area with a lot of the decisions that they make, but to each their own. I guess we're on to Pocono.
We are on to Pocono. For better or worse.
It feels worse.
I'm going to be very straight up. This is not one of my favorite tracks. I think it puts on decent enough racing. I think this is much more of a strategy race than a pure can you pass a guy on the track type race like we normally get with like intermediates. And so certain people like the fuel mileage and the, when are you going to pit? And then if weather gets involved, it gets very interesting because we saw Chris Buescher win because of a fog bank here several years ago. Because he was the only one that didn't pit. He stayed out, and there was a fog bank in turn 2, and they called the race, and he won it. Is also, by the way, the site of the last Wood Brothers win.
Really?
Ryan Blaney won it in the 21 car before he joined Penske. As their 99th win came at Pocono.
Oh, they're still sitting at 99, huh?
Mm-hmm. They have not won a race since then, as far as I can remember. So it's an interesting race. The only downside that I have for this week is that it is a smaller sample size of data to pull from. Because it's a relatively flat track. The steepest banking, I believe, is like 10 degrees in turn 1. Each of the turns are reminiscent of a different track. There are only 3 corners this week. For those of you who do not know that, Pocono is known as the Tricky Triangle because it is a triangularly shaped track. The 2 longest straightaways in NASCAR are on this track. The front stretch is the longest, and then the Long Pond straightaway, which is between turns 1 and 2, which is the tunnel turn, is the second longest. And then you get a little bit of a short shoot between turns 2 and 3. But yeah, this one for tracks, we're looking at Michigan. We can look a little bit at Auto Club this year, not
No, you mean last year?
Last year.
Yeah.
Last year, because they didn't run it this year. Not 2022, because tires were an unbelievable issue in that race. And then we can look at Michigan and then the last 2 Pocono races. Ordinarily, we would compare it to the Indy Oval, but they haven't run the Indy Oval since 2020, which means they haven't run it in the next gen car, and they are running it next week. But that doesn't really help us this week. So that's kind of the subset we're looking at. Not a lot to go on, but it is what it is this week. And Dan, you had a point about playing all three races this week for DFS before we started recording.
Yeah, it's weird because, well, I guess I can't complain because in previous years the Truck Series only ran 70 laps for their race. This year they're running 70, but still like that's less than 50 Dominator points. So you almost have to. I said you have to recalibrate your thought process when you're building lineups for each race because the truck race with less than 50 Dominator points, they don't really matter. You still want the win equity, and if you can get the Dominator points, great. But it's almost like you take a road course approach to it, which is strange because this isn't like the easiest track to pass at if you get a long green flag run. And then the Xfinity race, they add a few more laps, and so Dominator points become a little more important. But then Sunday's race has 160 laps, so that gives us about 100 Dominator points to consider and be mindful of when we're building our laps. So it's like for the truck race, I'm not really targeting Dominator points, but then come Sunday when we get to the Cup Series race, like I'll be considering them more. So be thoughtful and mindful of that if you are playing all three slates this weekend.
Yes, that's an excellent explanation there, and something that's not generally the case. Usually, if they're racing the same tracks across the weekend, you can Truck and Xfinity do run less laps than the Cup Series typically, but this is a track that's 2.5 miles per lap, so the number of laps really does matter, much like a road course. So yeah, with that, do we want to anything else that we want to talk about before we jump into the driver pool?
Nah, let's just pull it up, man.
Okay, so give me just a second here, and I will do the share screen thing. We'll do that. Yes.
Well, I guess we can just, while you're doing that, I guess it's no surprise that Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson are the two most expensive drivers in the field. Denny's won here, I think, like 6 or 7 times throughout his career. Literally 20% of the races he's won at Pocono,
including
last. Yep, he won last year. It takes a lot of horsepower to get around this track. The Toyotas certainly have it. You almost have to feel really good about the Toyota. If I was to power rank them, I guess I'd probably go like Toyota, Chevy, Ford in terms of my preference, or how I would power rank the manufacturers in terms of like win equity.
Yeah, so Toyota has won 3 of the last 5. Chevy has won the other 2. Kevin Harvick won in 2020 in the first 2020 race, because remember in 2020 they did that goofy. In both 2020 and 2021 they did the back-to-back weekend where they would race on Saturday, and then the top 20 got inverted for Sunday's race. So
crazy, but I liked that.
It was kind of fun. It was kind of nifty to get 2 days in one weekend.
For a race that I typically don't care about, I thought that was actually kind of fun.
I'll agree. That was nifty. If you're going to run 2 dates at Pocono, get them out of the way at the same weekend and kind of flip it just to have some fun. But yeah, in the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 races, Denny has won it 3 times. He's won it thrice in 7 races here. So pretty good track for Denny Hamlin. Also, he's been pretty good. What?
Safe to say.
Yeah, he's also been pretty good at the comparable tracks. So it's not really a shock to see that he is the top priced guy this week on DraftKings. Both of them are playable basically any weekend at this point. They've been alternating good weekends and apparently bad weekends because they seem to be off the same weekends sometimes too. But after that, we were talking before the pod. I think there's value a few spots lower down, just like you. I think Tyler Reddick, 9,800. is a guy that has more value than Bell or Truex or Byron.
Yeah, I'm actually a little surprised. And you can look at the track history and just see how the last two races have played out. And Tyler Reddick has finished second in the last two Pocono races here. But the other thing is too is like if we're talking about momentum, and we mentioned this on last week's podcast, the last couple of times that they've interviewed Tyler Reddick in a post race interview, it's legitimately like his dog died. He's
Yes.
incredibly upset. Like he's just down in the dumps. Like he was this way after Nashville. He's like, we got to get more wins. And granted, the guy finished third. Still a great day. Last week he finished his second. Almost runs down Bowman on the last couple of laps, but he tags the wall coming out of one of the turns at Chicago, and Bowman's able to pretty much just run away with it from there. But he's finished third at Nashville. He's finished second last week at Chicago. If we keep the trend going, like he's going to win Pocono, and he's running very, very well here. I love that he's focused solely on wins. It is nice to see that competitive side of him because he's arguably one of the nicest guys in the series. But like it's been like the demeanor has changed a little bit where he just seems he's a little more focused and it's good to see that a runner up is not good enough for him. So, but I agree. Like, yeah, 9,800. I would probably rank him above Bell, Truex, and Byron. And I probably would have had him as the third most expensive driver for this race.
I mean, if we're going based off of fantasy points per race, which I know isn't necessarily a scientific thing to go off of, he outscores everybody ahead of him except for Larson and Hamlin.
Mm-hmm.
So, in terms of a value, it's hard to see why. Like, I don't know. Byron's been okay here. Truex is probably the next guy in this grouping that I would look to because Truex has been pretty good here. In the past, this is technically a home race for Truex.
Of course it is.
Yeah, like 6 of them are. But I mean, Truex finished third here last year. He also ran pretty well the year before. He finished 7th. So odds are he's probably going to qualify in the top 10 and then basically pick up a few spots and fight for a top 5. And I think that's probably enough. But yeah, Reddick is really interesting to me at 9,800. And then we get to some interesting guys in like Blaney, Ty Gibbs, Keselowski, Logano. I think the issue with Blaney and Keselowski and Logano is that we've seen on tracks where aero matters that the Fords just can't keep pace.
Yeah.
And this is one of those tracks. Like, I don't want to say that they're completely out of it, but
I don't either. And I know that they made adjustments to the body of the car to make it more aero friendly, so they could be a little more competitive on the intermediates. I will say that I probably have a little more faith in the Fords at other tracks. Like we just saw Penske, kind of run wild on short flats. Keselowski, I kind of want to give a pass to because I do think that RFK has made significant strides. And, it wasn't that long ago when we would do this podcast when we were talking about maybe RFK is the class of the Ford field right now. Keselowski did get the win at Darlington, and we know Buescher has been knocking on the door a few times to win. So I think I still do like Brad this week. But overall, there aren't many Fords that I'm particularly high on. There are some in like probably the value tier that I have interest in. But for the most part, I think Brad might be my favorite Ford, just ahead of practice and qualifying.
I would agree. Also, if we're looking at the 5 race sample that I kind of gave earlier, which again, not a lot to go off of. Kez has one of the better average finishes. In fact, he's 4th in the group, and the best Ford because he's behind Hamlin, Truex, and a guy we'll get to a little later. Ty Gibbs is right there though too, in that group.
I know, and he actually has performed pretty well here in the Xfinity Series.
Yeah,
and again, it's a Joe Gibbs racing card. Like I don't want to like hype them all up, but yeah, sadly it'll be another week I get exposure to Ty.
Yeah, I mean he's $9,000. Like, would I like him if he's a little cheaper? Yes. But
Ty Gibbs in the Xfinity Series is the Tyler Reddick. In the last two Xfinity Series that Gibbs ran, he finished runner-up both times.
Yeah, so he's kind of an interesting guy. Now, here's my question: if you like Keselowski, are you willing to take the $800 savings and get Buescher? Because I'm starting to see a difference in the way they're running this year compared to last year. Last year, they seem to be way more within like a couple of spots of each other, if not Buescher having the better equipment. I'm not so sure that that's the case this year.
Yeah, I'm not going to necessarily completely write Buescher off. There's still plenty of top 5 equity here, and we have seen him run up front. But when you ask me if I could save, $800 going from Keselowski to Buescher, I would then say, well, I can just save $400 more, and I could go from Buescher to Bubba Wallace.
That's true. That's true. Touche. How about Bowman, who has a win here previously only because the guy in front of him ran out of gas? His teammate ran out of gas here, and then Bowman was running second and passed him for the win.
See, like, we actually hyped up Bowman a little bit not too long ago because he did have like a nice string of top 10 finishes.
I was pretty sure he was a sneaky play last week at Chicago. I had him written up.
I do think you mentioned something about him on the podcast.
I also had him written up in the playbook.
Yeah.
I had a top 10 for him.
Much credit to you.
I couldn't quite get on board with him winning for the bet, but I did have him a top 10 to bet. I don't know if the hangover is going to be out of his head.
Yeah, he wasn't shy about, describing how messed up he was going to get.
Yeah, and then he posted a picture at 6:45 a.m. the following morning, shirtless around a pool, saying, "We're still going." So he was not asleep on the bathroom floor at that point. I don't know if he wound up there. Not. But no, I do think that Bowman has run sneakily well here again. I don't know how many more times we can call him sneaky. I mean, he just won.
Yeah.
But he is kind of interesting again this week because I feel like we're going to have to kind of live in the mid-tier this week. Getting the right mid-tier guys this week is going to make all the difference in the world. So,
how do you feel about Daniel Suarez
this week? I think he's pretty reasonable, to be honest. I think, what did he finish here last year? Did he finish?
He wrecked last year, but he finished third in 2022, and he had back-to-back top 15 finishes with Trackhouse in 2020 and 2021, when the team was still kind of the Trackhouse back then. Those years wasn't what it is today.
Right. So,
and even when he had great equipment, and this is just another testament to how good JGR is here. He finished. I'm trying to read what I wrote earlier, but oh my God. But he had good finishes here when he was in the Cup Series with JGR. God, what was that, 6 years ago, it feels like?
Probably sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah, let me just pull up the profile. Contacts are betraying me.
But yeah, he's run, in the 5 race sample, he's had 3 top 6 finishes.
Yeah. In 2018, he finished second with JGR, led 29 laps from the pole, finished 7th here in 2017. Even grabbed a top 10 when he went to Stewart's SHR for that brief run. Upside, good GPP play. I probably don't trust him enough for cash because he can either, finish top 12 and be optimal, or he can, do what he did last year. He wrecks.
Correct. Yeah, we look back at just the last 10 Pocono races. He's got a pretty decent record here. But we do have to watch for he's either going to finish really well or he's going to wreck. Basically, he's like Kyle Larson at Texas. So there's that. Ironically, though, I'll ask you about a budget play here later, but it's hilarious. I don't know what to do with any of the SHR guys.
You almost have to feel bad for Ryan Priest, don't you? He's the only one.
He's the only one that doesn't have a job.
Oh man.
Because Gragson just got announced as front row's new driver. Josh Berry got a gig. Briscoe is going to Gibbs. Heck, even the crew chief got a job before Ryan Priest did.
I'll tell you what. I did. You talk about SHR, and it's funny because my preview for Fantrax was published this morning, and I did write up Noah Gragson. He won Pocono in the Xfinity Series. It's honestly kind of funny because I say, like, we're still waiting on news to get for his 2025 plans, and literally like 6 hours after this, it was announced he's going to front row. But what I also like is that the 10 car with Eric Almirola in the next gen car finished 12th and 13th in the two Poconos races the last 2 years. And even back in 2020,
but it is flat.
Correct. And even back in 2020, one of the two doubleheader races, Almirola did lead 61 laps. I know that these tracks are not great comparisons for Pocono, but, Gragson was 6th at Vegas, 9th at Kansas. So he does seem to like these higher speed intermediates, and the Xfinity history is there. This car and this team has done very well here. So I do like Gragson for those reasons. And sure, we have the narrative of him, being comfortable finding a job next year.
Yeah. He's probably the SHR guy that I like the most this week.
Yeah.
Unless we see something vastly different in practice. I guess you can make an argument that Ryan Priest has a fairly similar history here to Gragson in the Cup Series. And he's cheaper.
You don't sound like all that confident in that.
But I'm not. There's a reason why Ryan Priest is the only guy without a job next year in the Cup Series, right? At least of that garage. A guy I am way more confident in, Eric Jones.
Oh, good call. Couldn't agree more.
If we
because he's going to qualify poorly.
Yes, if we look at the 5-race sample from the last 2 years, Eric Jones has the third best average finish in the field at 11.4. His average start, by the way, is 25.4. So there's an average of 14 spots of PD for Jones here. And in the last 2 Pocono races, he's finished 11th and 9th. If you go over the last 10 Pocono races, which of course involves him driving for Gibbs as well, Eric Jones has been really quite good. He's got 5 top 10s in the last 10 races here. 3 of them came with Gibbs, but we've talked about it with Jones. When he's at a track he's comfortable with and knows how to race there, he gets more out of the equipment. Again, he's finished 11th and 9th here the last 2 years in the next-gen car. He started 34th and 24th in those 2 races. So for $7,000, we can just avoid the chaos of the SHR guys and invite the chaos of Eric Jones and hope for the best.
Well, and the other thing is, too, is that you're going to play Eric Jones. I'm going to play Eric Jones. And, early on in the race, I'm going to be like, why is Legacy so bad? And then you just kind of have to, wait it out. You just have to wait it out because somehow he and or John Hunter Nemechek will be running in the top 15 at the end of the race, and you're going to be like, oh yeah, they're not fast, they just survive.
Right. Well, as long as John Hunter Nemechek doesn't wind up going backwards off a wall like he did last week.
Fair.
That was ridiculous. Or Ross Chastain just flat driving through a tire barrier. There was that too. That was nuts. Anybody below the 7K range that you feel
Todd.
good about?
Todd.
That's fair. I mean,
I mean, like they are not really doing much with his price tag. He
they're
is
not.
basically going back to the Coke 600. He's returned at least 33 fantasy points, which for NASCAR at this price tag, you kind of take that and you're happy with it. Like he hasn't finished worse than 17th in his last 7 races, and he's an absolute like phenomenal value play, even if he starts in the top 15.
Yeah. I mean, you have to go back to Dover for the last time he finished outside the top 17.
Bonkers. That's wild. Kid's having a hell of a year.
That would be back in the end of April for those of you who don't remember exactly when Dover happened. So
he's better than Kyle Busch right now.
Yes, he is. Bud Gilliland is better than Kyle Busch, and he's way cheaper. John Hunter Nemechek, I guess, because the equipment is the same as Jones, but I'm not feeling great about that. How about this? I've got one for you.
Corey LaJoy.
What?
I thought you were going to maybe go with LaJoy. And if not, still, we should mention that he's getting Rodney Childers as a
He is getting Rodney Childers. No, this is who I was going to go with.
That's fantastic. Oh, Hemrick, what?
He's finished top 12 the last 2 races, and guess what? The last 2 times he's been at Pocono in the Cup Series, he's nabbed 2 top 10s.
Shut up.
Well, let me put it this way. His average finish is 10th. He's finished 13th and 7th.
Oh, I mean, yeah, all right. That's still really good for
his average start is – so he started 23rd and finished 13th. He started 17th and finished 7th.
Is this in the next gen era?
That's what we have to do. That's what we have to double check. I don't believe that he was there last year because he wasn't racing in Cup last year. But I believe that in 2022 he was in fact there.
Pocono.
No,
wait, these are both from 2019, Matt.
Excellent. I like it though. We're rolling with it.
All right, we will go with the recent form for Daniel Hemrick.
I'm kind of joking a little bit, but
that's fine.
We got to play him at some point.
I just want to chase what he's done the last 2 weeks.
Out of the guys that are this low, he's averaging a fairly decent points per race.
I think that's grossly inflated because he got 64 at Nashville and then 54 last week.
Yes, it is. However, he's running hot, so let's go.
How am I the one arguing against Daniel Hemrick?
I don't know, man. Things are topsy-turvy.
What has happened?
You've realized the errors of your ways. I'm trying to goat you at this point.
I will say I do kind of like Zane Smith. You know, we said this about Daniel Suarez, how he's either going to like score really well or he's going to wreck. That's kind of what you get with Zane Smith, but
correct.
Like $1,500 cheaper. He was second at Nashville for 76 points at 5,300. Legitimately thought he had a really good chance to win when they had those 5 overtimes. 17th last week at Chicago. You know, and he can go out. He's only 5,800, but he's put up 30-plus fantasy points right off the top of my head. Looks like 6 or 7 times this year. Good play, you know, like, and doesn't ever really draw a ton of ownership, and he always qualifies pretty far back. And if he just runs a clean race, and he's getting laps on Friday for the truck race, so I like the play at 5,800 for Zane, even though they have the wrong team name for his driver profile on DraftKings.
Shocker. I'll give you one more kind of off the wall one that doesn't get played a lot. Harrison Burton. He's run well here in the last 2 next-gen Pocono races. He finished 8th here last year after starting 26th.
Hmm.
And in 2022, he started 28th and finished 23rd. So not
Yeah, but honestly though, like 28 starts 28th and finishes 23rd at that price, like that's fine.
right. You just need him to finish and do it decently. I know it's been a terrible season for Harrison Burton, which is why he's being replaced.
Yeah.
But I don't know. He's coming to a track he's run well at previously. Clearly, he's in the market for a job. He's got to show that he can at least run well. Doesn't have to win, just has to run well to entice people. So if you want to get wonky this weekend, there are some guys to get wonky with.
Do we have any weather concerns?
We may.
Oh,
I mean, it's
great.
NASCAR. It's NASCAR in July, so we may in fact have some weather concerns.
Long Pond, Pennsylvania.
Long Pond, PA weather. We are both doing the same thing at the same time.
Yep, it's a race.
Let's see, 10-day forecast for Long Pond. We have AM showers on Saturday. We have afternoon showers on Friday, and we have mostly sunny on Sunday. It's about the best we can hope for right now.
Truthfully, yeah, you're not wrong.
There are less than 50% chances of rain on Friday and Saturday, so we'll have to see.
Matt, does the track have lights?
It does not have lights.
Does not have lights.
It does not have lights, which is why starting the truck race at 5:something at night Eastern
Yeah,
time.
I'm still going to be at work just watching it on my phone.
Yeah, so the schedule is a little wonky this weekend. Friday, truck practice and qualifying happens about 2 hours before the race starts.
It sucks.
Before this pod, you were already writing the truck playbook. Xfinity
It'll be
has
truck playbook will be up Thursday morning. Preview as always. Friday, I will try and update it while I'm at work. We'll do my best.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Pretty narrow window.
The Xfinity preview will be up Friday morning and updates. I'm going to try and do updates Saturday for that one as well. I have a weird Saturday schedule this week, but I will try to be in Discord to answer any and all questions.
Yeah, practice and qualifying for Xfinity is at like 10 a.m. Eastern Saturday morning, and then the race is, I think, 3 p.m. Eastern Saturday afternoon, and then the Cup practice and qualifying is, about noon? I think it's about noon Eastern. Yeah, noon Eastern for practice, 12:45 Eastern for qualifying, and then the race is 2:30 p.m. Eastern Sunday. So that's what we're looking at. Hopefully no weather concerns. That would be a first. And we'll get this race done, and we'll move on to Indy for the final race before the Olympic break kicks in.
All right. Well, Matt, thank you so much for your time. Best of luck to you this weekend, and best of luck to the FA Nation.
Best of luck, FA Nation.